family fun. It's Sunrise with Craig Vronick right here on KCMX AM 880. Lively conversations around news, politics, and people, plus local news and weather every 30 minutes. We want to hear from you. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or go to KCMXAM.com. Join in the conversation by calling 541-772-8255. Sunrise, where it matters what you think.
Welcome back. 6 minutes after the hour. So glad you've tuned in this morning at Sunrise with Craig on KCMX. 35 degrees outside and foggy. We'll see if it lifts out a little bit. I don't know. It's supposed to be 53 today. Whether it does or not, we will see. Depends on if it can just bake out entirely. Well, our next guest in the studio, Charlie Solis and his wife, Conceicao. And very, very cool. They've founded and run the Reach Family Institute, and it is a worldwide organization and a number of years. I don't even know actually how many years it's been, but Charlie, thank you so much for being in the studio this morning.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you had a good holiday.
Delightful to be here, yes.
Delightful, and of course, in your world travels, and of course, we want to welcome the wonderful Miss Conceicao. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, it's good. She's the brains behind the operation.
Exactly. The better half.
Exactly. Well, we welcome you both in the studio, and of course, all over the world. And Charlie, we've talked multiple different stories, and you've helped these families. And many people may not realize that families with children with disabilities, they have nowhere to go in third world countries. I mean, the list of your countries that you've toured: Venezuela, Mexico, France, Spain, Portugal, England, Poland, Norway, Denmark, Switzerland, and the Vatican City. Featured speaker at 2 different conferences at the Vatican and several world congresses for the family. And of course, the Reach Family Institute is a 501c3. You started that in May of 1998. But children all over the world have needs, and you've addressed these needs head on, and you've made incredible strides with them. I mean, isn't that something that the families? So yeah.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride. And the opportunity to work internationally has been a real gift. As you mentioned, particularly in third world countries, families don't have a lot of options. Poor families, and the advantage of our work, what we kind of bring to the table for those families, is that our work is focused on empowering the family to play an integral role in their child's development. And so when we go into a situation where we're working with a family who lives in poverty, they're not going to be able to access traditional rehabilitation. They simply don't have the money to be able to do that. And in many cases, even if they had the money, it would take half the day just to get to a therapist.
Oh, right, the travel. We've talked about that. Right. If they're home, I would think that the buy-in for the families is huge. It's like putting water on a dry sponge, right? They just soak this stuff up.
Absolutely. So it's been, I think we've been able to provide a real practical solution for a lot of families. And in fact, we're currently working on the development of a project similar to what we did in Venezuela with poor families in Brazil. So
very cool.
We still have a long way to go with that, but it's our hope that that one of these days, hopefully this coming year, we'll be able to get down to Conceicao's native country and
very good.
And help some families there.
Well, one of the things that and this came to mind, and we're having on the show today, is focusing on newborns.
Yeah.
And you've talked about in interviews past that the development of the brain in young children, we need to be careful and let them touch and feel and do and see and experience all of that. And sometimes we don't let the kids do that, as in being on the ground and learning how those first steps of walking. So take us through that, because you mentioned parents of little babies paying attention during the first few months to ensure good brain development, and that goes. I mean, tell us about that.
Well, yeah, this is it's a subject really dear to our heart for a lot of reasons, but in particular right now, because we just became grandparents for the first time. And so we spent the last 6 weeks with our daughter in Chicago and with our new grandson. And it was obviously an incredibly enriching experience personally.
Right.
But from a professional standpoint.
Oh, had to be.
It was phenomenal because, it's been a while since we've been around a newborn for so many hours of the day, so many days in a row, and so it was really enriching to be there and to experience the first 6 weeks of his life.
I mean, so the eye movement, right? That's an immediate connection with the brain and eye movement.
Yeah, there are. I thought what we'd talk about today is four really key elements to early brain development. 4 things that parents can pay really particular attention to in the first 3 months of life that will make a huge difference for their child's entire future.
Yeah, it's amazing. We talked about that with education on if they don't get what they get by the time they're either 3, 4, or 5, they're stunted in growth for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And so this goes right to that. So what are the 4 points?
Well, the first one is breastfeeding, and breastfeeding is important for a lot of reasons. Of course, not every mom is able to breastfeed, and that's fine if it's not possible.
Right.
But we believe that it's really important to give breastfeeding a really good shot, because the payoff is really significant. First of all, mother's milk is designed for human babies, and therefore it is the ideal food for a baby's development, a baby's physical development, neurological development, development of the immune system.
Yeah, aren't there antibodies or something like that in the mother's milk that are so important? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the formula has not been able to duplicate.
Exactly.
That's right, the formula hasn't been able to duplicate it. It's more filling than anything else.
Yeah. So breastfeeding is very important from a nutritional standpoint. But beyond that, there are a lot of other things that happen when a mother is breastfeeding. That can also happen with bottle feeding. It's just not as effective. Things like the bonding between mother and baby. There's just a special
right.
There's a special thing, almost an electricity that passes between the two of them when mom is breastfeeding. Another really fascinating aspect of it is what neuroscientists call the mutual gaze.
Wow.
The mutual gaze is that moment when a baby's eyes and a mother's eyes lock on each other, that sort of loving,
and I think I've
visual
seen that.
embrace.
I'm
sure you have.
It's it's profound. I wasn't able to explain it, but I looked at that. I knew what I was looking at as the baby was entrenched in their mother's eyes and mom as well.
Yeah.
And I was watching that going, whoa.
Well, and it's profound is really a great way of describing it. I mean, it's been celebrated by artists throughout history. The Madonna and Child image is a classic mother and baby image, and in that portrayal, what you are seeing is the mutual gaze. And it turns out that neuroscientists have been able to measure the electrical activity taking place in a baby's brain and a mother's brain at that moment. And it's fascinating because in a baby's brain, certain areas of the brain will literally light up and become extremely active when they're locked in that gaze. Mother's brain will do the same thing, but the areas of the brain that light up are different.
Interesting between the two.
Yeah. And we now know from neuroscientific studies that a baby's future emotional development is to a large extent determined by the number of mutual gaze experiences that the baby has with its primary caregiver during the first year of life.
So those mutual gaze sessions, that is lighting up the brain in that it normally wouldn't have if it wasn't having those mutual gazes.
Exactly. And this has a significant impact on future emotional development because the part of the brain in the baby that is being activated and stimulated during this time is what we call the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for emotional connection and eventually for qualities like compassion and empathy.
Right.
And boy, we have a big problem with that in society today, don't we?
Yeah. We spend a lot of time talking about folks, how they can lean in and help and reinvest. And let's get to the bottom of this because all of these shootings in these schools, these children are struggling. It's clear that they're struggling. Exactly. They have pain, they have anguish, they have anger, they have hurt, they don't feel connected, and they're doing the last ditch thing, and they're pulling out a gun.
Right.
And of course, we have to get to the bottom of that because the last thing I want is one of our children in our community coming to one of our schools and shooting someone. I mean, that's...
Yeah, and we certainly firmly believe that a lot of it goes back to what we do with babies in the early months of life.
Wow. Well, we'll take a quick little break and come right back. Charlie Solis and his wife, Conceicao, the brains of the outfit. Love that. You're both in the Reach Family Institute. We'll be right back. Stay tuned for more. We are just getting warmed up on the Sunrise Show. Back in a minute.
Stay tuned. Sunrise will return in a moment on KCMX News Talk 880. A little bold and extremely fun, Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. on KCMX AM 880. Lively conversations around news, politics, and people, plus local news and weather every 30 minutes. Here's Craig.
Good morning, 20 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Sunrise with Craig on KCMX. We've got Charlie and Conceicao Solis with Reach Family Institute in the studio with us this morning. And, Charlie, we're talking about the 4 aspects of newborn babies and that gaze. What was that called again?
It's called the mutual gaze.
The mutual gaze. Yes. So essential. And, you wonder, do they have that when they're on a bottle?
Well, sure. Yeah, I mean, you can.
You're holding close. I thought I've seen it with as well. I mean,
Absolutely.
They're there. They've got that gaze. Okay.
It's possible with a bottle, but one of the big differences with a bottle is that it's also possible to be detached from the baby with a bottle. So in other words, you could have the baby sitting in front of you, and you just hold the bottle out in the baby's mouth. So you don't necessarily have to hold the baby in your arms.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
When you're feeding with a
propped
bottle.
up on a pillow.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas
you should.
You should.
That's right.
Should. In order to mimic, if you will, as closely as possible, what happens during breastfeeding. I mean, that would be ideal.
Right.
But unfortunately, it's all too easy to not do that.
And how many moms have simply not gotten this information?
Of course not. Exactly.
Yeah,
And that's I think that's one of the real keys is education. And this experience of becoming grandparents has.
Oh, you got to watch this.
And it's lit in us a passion for getting this information out. That we're really on a mission.
Yeah, well, you knew it was there. You knew it was there.
And we were doing it.
Yeah, it's just now you're lit up. You're on fire.
Yeah, exactly. It's much more meaningful to us at this point.
Yeah. Well, so others.
So another key factor is sleeping arrangements. There's a big debate about should babies sleep in close proximity to parents? Should they be in a separate room? The trend in Western countries over the last half century or so has been to put baby in a separate room, so parents can get their rest.
But not right away, right? I mean, we did the whole bassinet thing next to the mom.
Well, that's ideal. Okay?
Yeah.
And essentially that is a form of co-sleeping.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And we're very
skin on skin.
We're very, very big advocates of co-sleeping, and by definition, what we mean by that is that baby is in close proximity to mom,
right?
And that could be in a bassinet in the same room. It could be in like a sort of a crib right alongside the bed. So there are a lot of ways of achieving that.
Yeah.
But the important point is that we think of pregnancy as 3 trimesters, 9 months.
Right.
But human development requires a really extensive period of time where parents and babies are interacting, and where parents are contributing to the baby's development. And so it's helpful to, when we think of this, to think of the first 3 months after birth as a 4th trimester.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Because when a baby is born, just because the baby is no longer in the womb does not mean that the baby's needs have totally changed. The baby still has a tremendous need for warmth and comfort, for tactile stimulation, for a lot of attention, and co-sleeping is a fantastic way of being able to give the baby
keep
that attention.
Yeah.
Another thing is that, and I think it's really beautiful when we look at development to see how all of these things interact with one another. When a baby is co-sleeping with mom, it makes breastfeeding much more practical and much easier.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So breastfeeding and sleeping arrangements really do go hand in hand. The person who has studied this more than anybody else on the planet is a professor of anthropology at Notre Dame, who actually got his PhD at the U of O.
Oh, very good.
His name is Jim McKenna, and Dr. McKenna is a good friend of ours, and he has done just absolutely spectacular research that demonstrates beyond any shadow of a doubt that babies who sleep in close proximity to mom in the first year of life are, by any way you want to measure it, vastly better off.
Wow, that's
than babies
fantastic.
who don't.
Fantastic.
So we think that's another key factor.
So your grandson, of course, you want to hook up and with Dr. Jim McKenna and your grandson, it's a pretty good deal.
Well, actually, Dr. Jim McKenna was my daughter's mentor.
Oh, excellent.
When she got her anthropology degree at Notre Dame.
Oh, my gosh. So that's even better.
So, yeah, that's how he became a good friend.
Oh, very good. Very good. Now, Conceicao, you're here and doing wonderful things, but this skin to skin, you mentioned that's also very important.
Yes.
And because just more bonding, right?
Exactly.
Mother, child.
Well, you have this tactile, the warmth, the baby's temperature in the first 3 months gets regulated by the mother's temperature. So it's nature is so wonderful. And so when you have that skin on skin, and again, when you're nursing, you tend to be more skin on skin.
Right.
When you're bottle feeding, you tend not to. But if mothers understand the importance and the need of that, can be done.
Right.
And so that skin on skin is also very important for bonding, for emotional.
It's just more part of the package,
part of the package, exactly.
And the baby and its tips and feeling, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a comfort level. I think that especially when moms are going back to work with 3 months, speaking from the mother's side, there is a pressure in their back of their mind that to start getting some independence to the child. And society, I think, does push for that. You put a monitor if they make noise, so you still can listen to them from another room. But when you are around newborns, if you just pay attention to them and follow their leads, and you see that they really need that contact, and there's a lot of time, demand, but it's for a good reason.
It's good, it's that total ability to reinvest in the child and give them And I talk about giving kids a fair shot at life.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And there have been some fascinating studies with premature babies that have demonstrated beautifully the importance of skin-to-skin contact. There was one study done about 10 years ago with a group of 100 preemies. All they did was provide 15 minutes of tactile stimulation, so, like little massage.
Only 15 minutes.
Holding 3 times a day for 10 days. And then they evaluated the results compared to a control group. And the preemies had 47% more weight gain. They had increased activity and alertness when they were awake. They had increased motor development. They spent 6 days less in the hospital.
Wow.
Saving approximately $3,000 per child in the neonatal intensive care units.
Think where that would be.
Exactly.
Wow.
But that's why a lot of hospitals now have volunteers to come in just to touch and to hold preemies.
Wow. We have a break coming up. We got to go. We got news and weather coming up next. We'll be right back. More on the show. I'm going to hold Charlie over. ReachFamilyInstitute.org. We'll be right back.
We want to hear from you. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or go to KCMXAM.com and go to the Talk to Us tab. Send us your thoughts. Lively conversations around news, politics, and people, plus local news and weather every 30 minutes.
Give me some loving every day. Yes, I know. Oh, baby.
Good morning. Welcome back. 33 minutes after the hour, 35 degrees. Supposed to be 53 today. We'll see if this fog breaks loose. In the studio with us this morning, we're continuing and holding over Charlie and his lovely wife, Conceicao. And, of course, they've started Reach Family Institute. They've been all over the world, reachfamilyinstitute.org, and just thrilled to have them here. And, Charlie, you mentioned workshops coming up, and you'll be going to Seattle to teach some of those.
Yes,
and then
we will be in Seattle the 22nd and 23rd of February teaching. And we'll be teaching our Purposeful Parenting Workshop, which covers all of the kinds of things we're talking about today, as well as a lot more.
Are there going to be a time when you can teach this locally for any of our local listeners?
Absolutely. We're doing the Northwest Swing at the end of February, beginning of March, and then we'll be scheduling workshops here in the Rogue Valley.
Like April and May, you
sometime,
think?
yeah.
Or?
Yep.
Okay, so maybe we can, when that gets closer.
Yeah, we'll actually be in
Chicago.
We'll be seeing children in France in March, followed by teaching workshops in South Bend, Indiana, with the Salvation Army's Kroc Community Center.
Oh my gosh, that's exciting!
And then also we'll be teaching in Chicago, and then once we get back in the end of March, we'll have workshops scheduled here in the Rogue Valley.
Busy. Wonderful.
Yes.
And the purposeful parenting is for expecting moms and young children that have no apparent neurological difficulties.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But we're also teaching how to
unleash your child's hidden potential.
There you go. Yeah, I know, because
which is our workshop for parents who've got kids with difficulties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, fantastic.
So that's all coming up.
Very exciting stuff. As far as newborns, we've covered breastfeeding and the skin-to-skin and the co-sleeping, but we didn't get to tummy time.
Exactly.
So
So this is another really, really key factor in the development of the brain. And it's something that in the last 25 years or so has been really, really neglected. In 1990, the American Academy of Pediatrics and the AMA issued some recommendations to try and deal with the SIDS problem, sudden infant death.
Yeah, that scares parents.
And it was a campaign called the Back to Sleep campaign, in which physicians encouraged families, really urged families to have their children sleep on their backs rather than their tummies. And what happened as a result of that was that a lot of parents kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater.
Wow.
And so instead of simply having children sleep on their backs, they had their children on their backs all the time because they were so afraid that if the child was on the tummy, they might end up dying of sudden infant death syndrome.
Have they really figured out reasoning why the SIDS issue is such an issue?
Well, we have our own
from the brain
our
aspect,
own beliefs about that. We think it has to do with brain immaturity, particularly the parts of the brain that control breathing,
right?
Which is the more primitive parts of the brain, and babies simply forget to breathe.
That's right; they just forget. Yeah,
and McKenna has found a link with smoking. Mothers that smoke.
Really?
Yeah. Very. When we talk about co-sleeping, obviously there are certain situations where that is contraindicated. So parents who are doing drugs, and that would include alcohol, tobacco, any kind of drug that affects
marijuana,
a parent's brain,
any of that,
is a contraindication to co-sleeping. But back to tummy time.
Yeah.
And so it turns out that physical mobility is one of the key factors in the organization of the brain. And babies are born with an innate drive to move. If you look at a baby on his back, a newborn, the newborn will move his arms and legs. He kicks his legs, swings his arms. But on the back, those movements serve no purpose. They have no meaning. It's kind of like a turtle on his back. Whereas if you turn the baby over, those random movements suddenly become movements of propulsion, movements of the first stage of mobility that we call crawling.
Yeah.
And babies will literally do that at birth if placed on mommy's tummy. Babies will literally crawl to the breast.
Oh my gosh!
It's part of our programming, and so what we strongly encourage is that when babies are awake, and obviously in the beginning, that's not there aren't that many awake moments during the day, but when they are awake, it's important to give them brief periods of time to spend on their tummies. Obviously, one needs to be there, paying attention, watching to make sure they're, you have to make sure they're not, bundled up in blankets and things like that. But if you do that, what you'll find is almost immediately the baby will begin to try and resist the force of gravity by lifting his head up. Okay.
Oh, right.
And to give you an idea of how effective this can be, our grandson rolled over from tummy to back on the 8th day of his life.
And again a month later, at 1 month of age.
Oh my gosh!
And
in comparison to other babies doing it, like you're saying,
most babies generally, we don't expect babies to be rolling over until about 3 months of age.
If they're given the opportunity.
And that's if they're given the opportunity.
Wow.
He rolled over for the first time at 8 days. And now, of course, that wasn't purposeful.
No.
He didn't decide, I think I'm going to flip over onto my back. It was more almost out of frustration.
But between you and your daughter, you were able to say, let's try this,
yes,
right? And you
absolutely.
Put him on his tummy, and you were standing there watching, and
absolutely,
everyone's taking notes.
And he loves being on his tummy. He's got phenomenal head control. Even if you hold him in a vertical position, he holds his head up beautifully at only 6 weeks of age.
I've seen many of the babies are very headstrong, if you would, and you have to make sure that they don't do that over backwards, right? Because they kind of they extend and go right back.
Sure,
So,
yeah. I mean, the head is a pretty heavy weight.
Yeah, exactly. Well, those are just some amazing tips and concepts for both expectant parents and mothers with newborn babies. And we've got a friend of the family that's a brand new baby, 12 or 13 days old, so this will be perfect for her.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And we'll be, if listeners go to our website, reachfamilyinstitute.org,
Right.
There's a tab there for our blog. And next week we'll be publishing a blog post specifically about all of this
excellent.
stuff.
Excellent.
Yeah, with tips.
Very good. Wow. Wow. Well, it's always fascinating, Charlie, when you come in, and so thankful you brought the other half this morning.
Yes.
It's great to have this,
Thank you.
Conceicao, thank you so much for coming in. And the world traveling is just phenomenal, mainly because you go where the children's needs are, right? I mean, and quite frankly, I would think where the communities recognize the tie-in, the reinvestment in their neighborhoods and the communities, and the medical staff are reinvesting.
Exactly.
And then, of course, families with kids with disabilities, that's huge. And have you tied in with the autistic community here? I mean, Families for Communities, and Miss Emily Sampson with the Families for Communities. We're going to have to do that.
Yes, we need to do that.
Because the autism now, of course, they're saying Southern Oregon, they've just been kind of grouped, but we've seen, and there's a lot of fantastic, wonderful things happening for families with that. So.
Yeah, fortunately.
You're exactly right. Well, thank you so much. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, Charlie Solis and his wife, reachfamilyinstitute.org. You want to check that out. Time is precious, and of course, they are off to their next adventure. They've toured all over the world and even recognized by the Pope in the Vatican City. So that's pretty exciting as well. So we'll maybe try to get this up on our podcast page for anyone that's listening as well. And then let's do that. But in the meantime, I guess we'll take a break and come back after. And Charlie, thanks so much for coming in, and glad to meet you.
Thank you so much for having us.
It's
always a pleasure.
Excellent. All right, we'll be back. We got more coming up on the Sunrise Show, just getting warmed up. And then, of course, getting ready for Alex Jones at 9 o'clock this morning. And, you don't know what he's going to be saying. All right, back after this.
Stay tuned. Sunrise will return in a moment on KCMX News Time 880.